Okay, so I gotta turn this back on. So the next one that we're asked to do, give it a second here. And there we go. We're asked to find f divided by g of x. And so that's just going to be equal to f of x divided by g of x. Whoops, I didn't want to do it that way. And so then that is going to be equal to, remember f of x is this thing. This is like the name of this. So I'm going to say 8x cubed all over. And remember, g of x is the name for this thing. Now, I know I'm going to have to do some simplifying. So what is 8 divided by negative 2? Just negative 4. Then when we go to do this, I'm going to change, because I need a common denominator, I'm going to subtract 3/2 from the bottom on the top. But I need a common denominator, so x to the 3 is the same as 6 over 2. And then when I subtract my minus 3/2 from the bottom, and I also have to do it from the top, that's going to give me a different answer. So this becomes x and then raised to the 3/2. And so this is the final answer, but both on part A and part B, and I kind of, because I got excited, I forgot to mention that on part 1, we have to find the domain. So let me go back to part 1. When they ask us about the domain are all the possible x's. And there are only 2 restrictions on the domain. You can't take the square root of a negative number, and you can't have 0 in the denominator. But remember that this is the same as negative 16 times the square root of x. Well, let me undo that real quick because I didn't give myself enough room. Times the square root of x raised to the 9th power. So x can't be negative. And remember that the fancy way of saying x can't be negative is that x has to be greater than or equal to 0. Likewise, if I go to this problem over here, even though we have fractions, when I simplify the fractions, I no longer have a fraction, but remember that this is the same as negative 4 times the square root of x raised to the 3rd power. Because remember, when it comes to these rational exponents, it's the power over the root. So again, my domain on this one would be x can't be negative because I can't take the square root of a negative number, so x has to be greater than or equal to 0. Okay? And then the last part of this question, and I'm going to start a new slide. Does everybody have this written down, or can I move on to the next thing? Yeah? So then the next thing is they wanted us to evaluate it at, what was it, 4? So the first one, when I say f, g evaluated at 4, and what was that, negative 16? Yeah, negative 16 to the 9/2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say negative 16, but wherever there was an x, I'm going to plug in the 4 to the 9/2. Now, for this is pretty easy. We'll just do that on our calculator. And I don't know if you guys can see it, but negative 16 times 4 raised to the 9 halves is minus 8,192. Okay. So this is going to end up becoming negative 8,192. Lastly, if I say f over g, that's a funky looking f, evaluated at 4, again we have negative 4 times the quantity 4 raised to the 3 halves. And again, we could just plug that into our calculator. Let me clear this out. So I'm going to say negative 4, then in parentheses I'm going to put 4, and then raise that to the 3 divided by 2. Negative 32. And that's basically it. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about what I did there?